Yesterday, I realized, as I keep saying over and over, my parents had a very traditional relationship, and also their friends and the people in the neighborhood. Everybody was married and had children, and I didn't know about divorce and dysfunctional relationships as a child. And then after my second divorce, I had very amicable separations with my two wives. I tried to find like my third wife, and thought that that should be relatively easy, and then got into this whole new age postmodern Northern Californian dating scene. And I was just increasingly curious why do I get into a community where people really struggle with being in healthy long-term relationships. And of course, I became one of these people too. And that's, so I was always looking, so like, what is the next step forward, right? That didn't seem to be satisfying to me, a huge amount of single childless people, or this serial dating, serial monogamy, polyamory. I mean, that's all fine, right, in a way, but I didn't see that as the foundation for a sustainable, peaceful future for humanity. And of course, going back to the old paradigm, as a lot of people in America are kind of promoting, right, that also didn't seem to be desirable. And so obviously I then wrote Integral Relationship, and out of that emerged this idea of learning, healing, growing, awakening together in a relationship, what we talked a lot about in the last 21 modules. But also I found out that these relationships are also somewhat unstable, that there doesn't seem to be sort of like a clue or something that really bonds people together, how they bond together in very traditional, transactional, biologically based or driven relationships. And then this idea about shared purpose, and here comes the word, right? What do we call this purpose that is shared? And as I was investigating this whole topic, I realized that there is already a lot of words for purpose. So the idea of living a purpose that goes beyond our biological purpose, and maybe even beyond learning, healing, growing, awakening, is not a new one. And some people call it spirit's purpose, or unique purpose, or higher, or God's purpose, or real true purpose, or soul's purpose, or evolutionary purpose, or authentic purpose, or universe's purpose. These are the words I found, and maybe there are a few more. And I think very loosely we can assign these different words to different levels of consciousness. And that's also very interesting and important, is that people at all levels of consciousness can awaken to their purpose, or a purpose that goes beyond the biological purpose. And since I didn't want to identify with any of these words, because I feel they all have limitations, I called it transcendental purpose. A, because it goes beyond our biological purpose, and B, as we will see in a few minutes, the basic root and basic talents that then can be manifested or transformed into our transcendental purpose exists a priori, which means it exists before we create a self based on experiences and language and things like that. So that's why we use the word transcendental purpose. But there is a lot of research that living our transcendental purpose, or whatever we want to call it, has huge health benefits and psychological benefits. So Arthur C. Brooks and the Dalai Lama wrote, Americans who prioritize doing good for others are almost twice as likely to say that they're very happy about their lives. And in Germany, people are 5 times likelier to say they're very happy if they feel they live their transcendental purpose. And we also know that people who are in healthy long-term relationships and marriages also enjoy greater physical and emotional health, sexual satisfaction, longevity, have higher incomes, better education, things like that. So, of course, we ultimately don't know what is cause and effect, but these are the two scientifically proven factors in our lives that bring lasting happiness, is living our purpose beyond our biological purpose, or maybe even living our biological purpose, and being in a healthy relationship. And so that's, of course, a surefire way then to combine both to have the highest benefit. Now, I was initially inspired by Andrew Cohen's book, Evolutionary Spirituality. And one problem I had with this book and with other purpose books is that they often don't have moral guardrails or checks and balances in place. They're basically in one way or another suggesting that we follow some higher guidance or some higher power or something like that, and just intuitively follow this voice or this calling. And the problem I have with that is that, of course, any kind of villain or evil person like Nazis or the ISIS people or whoever, right? They can justify that they're following some higher calling, God's calling or whatever in what they're doing. And so, and we will see in a moment why I did this. I think a transcendental purpose always either creates more goodness, more truth, more beauty, or more functionality. And that's, of course, what we see in the four quadrant and from Plato going forward in philosophy, that for some reason, which I will explain in a moment, we feel, or humans who look at evolution, that humanity over time has moved always towards more goodness, more truth, more beauty, and more functionality, of course, with the setbacks. So this is important for me and what I'm teaching, that people use these criteria to make sure that they live their transcendental purpose and not don't follow some misguided voices. And it's always in service of the biological purpose. That's another important thing. And the well-being of others. So I think once we have these criteria, then we can better determine if we are really living our transcendental purpose. And the real kicker that you may not be aware of, I didn't know about that until a few years ago, was that our transcendental purpose is genetically encoded. It became genetically encoded through the sexual selection process over hundreds of thousands of years. And that is because, obviously not every guy can be tall and strong and have big muscles, or doesn't. And so males developed very early on certain capacities for intelligence, for being more empathetic than others, being more creative, or being more practical than others, to compensate for physical weakness. And women started to select, in addition maybe to looks and strength, started to select men who were empathetic towards them and their offspring, and maybe people in the tribe who were cognitively intelligent, who were able to create beauty or entertain them in the widest sense, and who were practical with their hands and making things or organizing things. And having read probably thousands of dating profiles, you can really see that women always say, I want a guy who's good looking and who's smart and who's emotionally available and who's funny or creative and who can fix things around the house. That's usually the four criteria, in addition to looks, what women are looking for in men. And they select for these qualities and have done so for hundreds of thousands of years. And so here is the little image that women not only fall in love with bodies, but also with brains. And there is a word for that called sapiosexual, being sapiosexual. And then the genes of the offspring of the females who selected the more empathetic, the more intelligent, the more creative, the more practical guys, their children had a higher chance of survival than if you were selecting someone who didn't show these qualities, and were handed down through the process of meiosis, which is, I wasn't aware about that until I researched that for my book. You know how when we form early on, the 26 chromosomes get separated into 13 in males and in females, and then they get recombined when we procreate. And so through that process, the talents from our ancestors get handed down to us, and then from us if we procreate too.